Did you grow up loving books? When is your earliest memory of books being a part of your life?
Oh, I loved books before I knew they were books. You know, my folks read to me. My mother was a wonderful interpretive reader. She was a school teacher, and she loved stories. So when I was 5, I got my first library card, and I was so proud because I could print Karen and see it on my card.
Now, what library was that?
That was the Ventura County Library in Southern California. That was my hometown.
Do you remember the librarians? Were they helpful? And
Oh yes, but I remember the librarians more from school than from there. But I can still picture the main librarian. She had dark hair with beautiful French twist.
do you remember the first book you owned yourself? Your first book?
Yes, I do. It was a gift. I think when I was about 2.5, 3, I was given the gift, Stories That Never Grow Old. Oh, such a wonderful book. And those were my favorite stories for many, many years. And it was written to me from these good friends of my parents. And so that was very special, you know, to have it dedicated to me. So during the pandemic, I really felt for all the mothers and teachers who were trying to fill hours and hours of time and on Zoom and so forth. So I did a little book reading on YouTube, and I started with Stories That Never Grow Old. And then of course I had to expand from there because I ran out of stories.
So you still do readings and stuff?
No, I haven't done. I did about 40, 45 of those, and they're all posted on my website. So if somebody needs a little 10-minute break, they can put their kid in front of that.
So books were important to you all through school?
Oh yeah. I was always a reader. Oh, I could be lost, you know. My mother call me to come set the table, and then she'd be annoyed, you know. I called, and I'd say, I didn't hear you. So I don't know, that kind of focus that I felt for books, that is carried over into my acting, where I am not easily distracted during a performance.
Well, did your love for reading, kind of like you touched on it there, sort of lead to your interest in drama and getting involved in acting, or do you remember how that?
From the very beginning, I wanted to get up and sing, and get up and dance, and get up and do the school play, whatever it was they were offering us. I wanted to get up and do it. So I showed a tendency toward performing from a very young age.
Do you remember the first production you were in, you thought, this is it, this is what I want to do?
Actually, I talk about that in my talk today. I didn't admit it to myself for many, many years. But finally, when I was 19 years old, I realized this is it. I have to do this. And I called my parents long distance, you know, which was expensive then, and said, I know what I want to do. And when they heard what it was, my mother said, now, Karen, let's not discuss this on the telephone. We'll be down to see the play, and we can talk about it when you get home. And when we got home, I told them, this is it. You said you wanted me to be happy. Well, this is what makes me happy. Oh, it was a very silly play, but I had done a very important play the spring before, so it was more accumulation of experiences.
And from there, what was your first really big production you were involved in that you thought, wow, this is what I've been trying to do forever?
Well, I left school and joined a theater in San Francisco, and I was cast in main stage production of Henry IV Part 1, and I played the Welsh lady who speaks only in Welsh and sings in Welsh. And to me, that was fantastic because I was with all the big guys, you know. I'm professional actors, wonderful actors and actresses. So that was my first big show.
And when did you go to New York? When did that happen?
After I came back from London, I did a year of repertory theater, and then I went to New York to audition, thinking I'm going right back out to do more rep. But I was married to my very first husband. We were young and both actors, and we didn't get offers at the same theater. And we didn't feel it would be good for us to go to two different theaters our first year of marriage. So we stayed in New York and had a go at a career, and both did find work.
What was your favorite play you did in New York? You remember? Or do you have a favorite? Maybe that's not a fair question.
I would say Shakespeare in the Park in New York at the Public Theater. I did Cymbeline, which is, they call it the female Hamlet. Very, very exciting part. And I had fantastic leading men. I had Sam Waterston and Christopher Walken. You know, it was the big time.
And how old were you then, if you don't mind my asking? How old were you?
I don't mind you asking. I would say late 20s.
That had to be kind of heady working with all these people you'd seen and known. And
It was very exciting. Yeah, I was very nervous.
You write about this in your book, but at what point, and I want to talk about recovery and stuff too, at what point did alcohol start becoming a part of life for you?
Oh, well, alcohol was always a part of life for me because my dad was alcoholic. So our family was deeply injured by alcoholism, all of us. As you know, alcoholism is a family disease. So even though someone might not drink, like my mom didn't really have a problem, she was still affected by the disease. And my sister and I had great insecurities around not knowing how Daddy would be when he came home. And my dad was a great guy, but he was an alcoholic. So I started to have trouble with alcohol, I would say right away, maybe when I was 19. I'd go to a party, and I never knew whether I was going to have a great time and dance around and be the life of the party, or if I was going to wind up on the floor sobbing my guts out. I just never knew how it would affect me. But I had no idea that was alcoholism. I thought if I got psychotherapy, you know, and resolved some of these issues from my childhood, that then I would be able to drink like other people. Finally, during Little House on the Prairie, I hit my bottom. Thank God. So then my life could turn around. Because you can't fix something if you don't know what it is, you know? And I feel this incredible gratitude for having been born alcoholic, because I was very opinionated, very stubborn, full of myself as a young woman. And I think that really it was alcoholism and hitting bottom that made me teachable and made me open to a spiritual life in a deep way.
And so when you started, I mean, AA was there, but there wasn't a preponderance of recovery availability and acceptability when you began to have problems with your drinking, right? I mean,
well, I didn't understand that I had a problem.
Did you go to 12-step? Did you go? What was the point where somebody said, "Hey, here's how you can get help for that"?
I knew because my mother loved a lot of alcoholics. My dad, two of her best girlfriends were alcoholic, and she had been to AA with them to help them. So I knew what AA was, but I didn't know it was for me. It's the strangest mindset with the alcoholic, where we have the problem, but the mind tells us that it isn't the alcohol. And we can't conceive of how to live without alcohol. So there's this tremendous denial that has to be overcome. And when mine was overcome, I knew to seek help from the people who knew what to do.
You mentioned gratitude a while ago. How important has gratitude been in your life and in your recovery?
I would say central to my recovery. And here it is, almost Thanksgiving. So it's a wonderful time for me to count these blessings, you know. And there are so many blessings that have come to me because of recovery. I mean, this book wouldn't exist. How would I ever have been able to tell my story in an honest way if I hadn't gotten recovery?
And how did the book come about? Writing a book, it's very hard work, right?
Yes.
How long did it take you to put it together?
I would say about 10 years. I didn't know when I first started that it was a book. I had moved back to the San Francisco Bay Area after many, many years away, and so I didn't have as many friends there. And I spent a lot of time alone. And during this rather lonely time, these memories just were rising. And I thought, I should be writing these down. If nobody else cares, at least it'll be interesting for my son. And I had always done some writing, journaling. In college, I wrote short stories and stuff like that. So I did start writing, and then I took a class in memoir writing, which women all over this country are doing now. And I got very interested in the whole thing. I started reading memoirs. I started practicing different writing techniques. And a group of us joined, or rather started, a memoir circle. And we've been writing together now for 13 years. And we put out a little collection of our writings every year, one piece for each woman. And we call it Berries from Brambles. And I put that on my author site on Amazon.
At what point did you know you had a book, though? You're saying you weren't.
Well, my teacher encouraged me. I said, I showed her my first draft. I said, do you think this could be a book? Oh, yeah. But it was a long way from a book. I had to go through many drafts. I had to have people like my teacher read it, give me notes, go back to the computer, rewrite, to find it, what the story was, and also how to uncover these layers inside myself so that I really told the raw part of the story.
And that was my next question, is were you reluctant to just sort of tell the hard parts, or were you just ready, because the memoir writing is just ready to get it out?
Some parts were hard for me to be willing to share with the public. Yeah.
Were there people that you were worried would have negative reaction to some of the stuff you wrote, or?
Well, my parents were gone, and I think that gave me permission, because I definitely didn't want to hurt them. And I was hopeful that my sister would be on board. You know, I don't know if she has read it to this day, but she was very supportive that it was coming out and, you know, was happy for me and all that.
Well, I think most of the people that I've read talking about memoir writing have said it's your story. It's your story to tell, whether other people are happy about it or not. It's your story to tell.
You have no choice. It's your story. Yeah, that's right.
And what kind of reaction and feedback have you got from readers? And I know you're traveling, you're talking about this book tour is something very different than touring as an actor.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
You know, it's very moving for me because people will share some of their personal story with me because I have been open and honest about my alcoholism and the family alcoholism. And so they feel comfortable letting me know some of their struggles. And that's very moving.
Are you still journaling, or are you still?
Yes, although I must say I've never had so many mornings as I have on this book tour where I could not find time to journal. You know, I was semi-retired when I moved to the Bay Area, so I have these leisurely mornings, you know, and it usually takes me about an hour and a half just to get to the kitchen.
But you're still involved in theater and acting and stuff?
Oh yeah, last summer I went to Canada and did On Golden Pond. And I have a film that came out during the pandemic. It's called Not to Forget, and it's available on Prime.
What's that about?
It's about dementia. It's a family story, and I play an old granny who's demented, but she has that kind of dementia where she's kind of happy, and she has very few bad days. And her grandson gets sent by a judge to go and stay with her because he is a bad actor. And the judge thinks, you go down and stay on the farm and do some work and maybe you'll straighten out. So he shows up there, and right away he tries to pull a scam in his own old habits. But guess what? He gets converted to a good life. It's a wonderful family story.
How do you hope this book will be remembered? I mean, you just mentioned that you felt like it was helping some people. Is that, I mean, you want to tell your story, but is that sort of a secondary goal that people can find help?
Well, that's not my business whether people find help, but I have several themes, and you raised one of them, which is recovery. One of them is women's issues, which has been very, very important in my life. My mother was a very independent woman, and my father was very respectful of her. So that was the role modeling that I got. And I was a feminist from the time that I was in junior high school, you know. I was saying, no, there should be a girl on the telescope committee. There should be a girl. Because I come from that generation when the highest office that you could have in school was vice president, right? And you
Right.
could
We're still stuck a little bit there, I think.
and you could aspire to being a secretary or a nurse or a teacher. And I looked at that and I said, gee, I just don't feel it, you know. So that's another theme. And
It's also something you're still active in. It's not just the themes of your book. That's
right.
You're still devoting a lot of your life and time to these things.
That's right. And then, you know, I did this film, Battered, about battered women, and that was very important to get the word out that we had to deal with this issue. But beyond that, I think this book is almost required reading for an actor, to see what that journey can be, to see what the demands are, what it is to audition, what it is to train. You know, a lot of people don't know what the training is. And I think it's good for people to have a chance to see the journey all the way through. And then, of course, it's so different working in television from the theater. I think they can learn from that too. My book is called Bright Lights, Prairie Dust. It's available at local bookstores all over this area, and it's also available on Amazon, and it's also available on audio. So if you don't have time to sit down and read, you can listen to it while you're making dinner or driving in the car to work or whatever. Oh yeah, if you want to know about what I'm doing and stay up to date with me, It's karengrassle.net. And I have an insiders group there if you want to join. I send out emails about things like this tour and where I'm going to be and if I'm making an appearance.